Are you a parent of teens? Are you interested in learning and sharing insights on parenting teens? Welcome back to Parenting Teens. Today I'm privileged to have Letitia. She's going to tell us about herself, and we're going to be talking about remote parenting. Letitia, you're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions here that I'm going to ask you. I'm just going to be reading them out.
Yeah.
And feel free to share with us your experience in remote parenting.
Sure.
So Letitia, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and a bit about your experience with teens.
Thank you. My name is Letitia Amduki, as you said. I'm a humanitarian worker, and through the years, I've secured opportunities to work outside of my home country, that is away from home. And I've worked in Somalia, Uganda, South Sudan, and currently Tanzania. And all this time, leaving my children behind. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience parenting teens.
My experience parenting teens. Okay, let me start from when I first left home and went to Somalia, where I had my first international job. At the time, my two boys were in grade 6, and my daughter, who is the firstborn, was in Form 2. She was 14 then. I would say I hadn't really prepared them when I first left home. I think I remember school had just closed. They arrived home the same day I was leaving. I had not thought about leaving home before, but an opportunity had presented itself for me to work in Somalia. A friend had called me asking because they had advertised a role and failed to get the right person, and then she recalled, oh, I know someone who actually can fit in this position, and so she called me and asked if I would be interested. I applied for the role, was interviewed, and actually made it for the role. And so my children arrived home a day before I travel, and I'm telling them, oh, you know, mommy is traveling, she's going to Somalia. I love you guys, but I'll be away from home, but I'll always be coming. I remember my daughter feeling really bad, but again, I explained to her that I would always come, and that when I come, I would always visit her in school. And yeah, and that's how I left. Went to Somalia for 2 years. So during this period, I remember I used to come home every 8 weeks, every 6 to 8 weeks. And every time I came home, within the first week, I would make sure that I visited each one of them at school. And I would really spend time with them. I went to school, I made sure I was very close to their teachers. I made sure that their teachers knew I wasn't home, and that when I came, they allowed me to spend time with each one of them. I would spend the whole day at school when I'm around. But also built very strong relationships with their teachers. So much so that their teachers would call either me or their dad anytime in case they needed anything. So 2 things that I did was build very strong relationships with their teachers, and also very deliberately spend time with them when I came. I also really made use of my mom. My mom really stepped in. She would go for some of those events at school when if they happened, if I was not around and the father was not able to visit. She would always go to school and represent us. She would pick them from school, and then we would pick her. We would pick the children from her place, from my mother's place, every time we came around. And yeah, just being really deliberate about spending time and explaining to them that I need to do this, it's for our good, I'm doing this for my good, it's also for your good, but it doesn't mean I don't love you. Of course, by then they were still young, but they understood. And I remember my boys. I remember the boy, one of actually the youngest, telling me, "You love what you do? Go ahead and do it." And he never had issues.
Yeah, and in life we have to make sacrifices.
Exactly.
You can't have good things without making some sacrifices, right?
Sure.
So, how and what drove you to make a decision to become a remote parent? And I'm using the word remote parent sparingly, because I know it's not a very nice term.
For lack of a better word.
Yes, exactly.
Because the other word could be distance parenting, whatever it is, for as long as it captures the fact that you play your parental roles while away from home.
Yes.
Yeah, as I said earlier, it wasn't really something I had thought about earlier. But then because I was so keen about building my career, and I realized that working in locations where some of these issues are being experienced. In my master's, my thesis was school-based factors and socio-cultural factors influencing girls drop out from school. I was very passionate about keeping girls in school. And working in Somalia presented an opportunity for me to literally interact with, girls who had been forced to either drop out of school or whose attendance of school was quite irregular. And I felt that there was not going to be a better opportunity for me to learn and build my career than this. And so I had to take up the opportunity. And of course, after that, as I started growing my career, it was literally taking one role after the other. Of course, as I grew through the positions through my career, I'd also really had conversations with my children. I'd made them understand that it takes effort, it takes sacrifice, it takes a lot to build a career, and I think they all appreciated it. Yeah.
How do you feel about the decision you made, and what would you tell other parents who find themselves needing to make this decision?
As a parent, I don't regret having taken the decision because looking back, I don't think that there's anything I could have done that I didn't do as a parent, because being away didn't take away my responsibilities as a parent. I still played my responsibilities as a parent, and for anything that I couldn't do myself, I had someone step in. And most of the time, this person was my mom, who also understood exactly why I needed to be away from home, or their father, who equally understood why I needed to be away from home. So when I came home, we spent time together, and I made sure that I spent my entire time home with my children. And so I really don't think I have regrets about that. For parents or for anyone considering, I think I want to say for mothers, not even for anyone, because I think for fathers, it's a common thing that fathers are away from home. It's for the mothers that is quite challenging. And a lot of times, even in countries where I have worked, I've been asked, how do you manage? How do you make it? You're here. How do you have children? It's a question I've been asked a lot of times. So what I would say is that when you have such opportunities, I think you just need to be very deliberate about parenting, because a lot of times you find that like in the humanitarian sector, you find yourself in locations that are unfamiliar, and that means you have to leave your children behind. It would be unfair for you to put your career to a halt. And most women have been caught in this scenario where you have to make a decision between either remaining home to be a mother to your children or being out there and build your career. But I want to say from my own experience that it's possible to do both.
And as you said that, I think you have mentioned that you had to deliberately and make intentional decisions to bond with your teens, because partly because I think you are aware that you have little time with them.
Yeah.
So every time that you had with them had to count.
Exactly. Every time I was home counted, and for me it was time for me and the children. It was family time. And I also made sure that even when I'm away, I had that support to make sure that I know that no one can step into the shoe of a mother, but there are people who really stepped in to cover for the gap. Their teachers, for example, I built very strong relationships with them. And a lot of times my children knew that they could speak to their teachers and that their teachers would listen to them and provide that support. It happened for both the boys and the girl. That support was there. Then my mom really stepped in, and some of my friends also really stepped in. So yeah, that is of course besides their dad.
Yeah, another thing you did mention is for mothers, it's a little bit different from fathers.
Yeah.
When you have to make a decision between advancing your career and taking care of your teens, or your children for that matter, sometimes women could be judged differently.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that?
In terms of judgment by society, I think it just didn't bother me, to be honest, because I knew the efforts that I was putting into place to cover for the gaps. I knew that when I'm around, my children mattered the most, and that I spent all the time that I needed to spend with them. So it didn't really bother me what people thought or what people thought. A lot of times people asked questions, but it didn't really bother me because I knew that when I'm around, I did everything I could. And besides that, I also think that it's important to know when you can't keep staying away.
Yeah.
You need to know when to stop. Because I remember at some point, the reason I left Somalia was because of my children. All of them were candidates. The boys were sitting class 8 and the girl was sitting form 4. And it happened that their father visited them in school, and one of them was sick and was in the sick bay. So I think I was expecting a delegation. We were expecting a delegation from our donors to visit, and so I couldn't come. And I felt really bad. And I sat down and asked myself, I can always get other jobs, but if I lost my children, I can't get them. And so I made a decision and resigned and returned home. And when I returned home at the time, I was very deliberate. Again, I was quite deliberate on why I was resigning and what I needed to do. So I came home and I was very particular. I wanted to support my children and make sure that they go through school, sit for the exams, and do really well in their exams. And I was very deliberate about this. I went to school, made sure I spoke to their teachers, expressed what my desires were, the schools I wanted them to join, and all the support that I needed to give to my children to make sure that they make it to the schools. And believe you me, each one of them went to a national school and to the schools I had wanted them to go to.
Yeah, it's very interesting because you make the same. You're the one making the decision about where to go and work, and I know you've worked in Somalia, you've worked in Uganda. You're now in Tanzania.
I've been in South Sudan.
You've been in South Sudan, but it's really your decision and your choice.
Yeah.
So you can always withdraw that decision and come back home if you needed to.
Exactly, you can always withdraw when you feel that it's compromising your children. Yeah, you have to get to that point, that there has to be what we call deal breakers.
Mhm.
When it's anything that is going to compromise my children, then in that case, I'd rather not have the job.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then again,
But also, is it not an issue of having your cake and eating it? You have to, you can't have your cake and eat it. So you have to make that decision.
Yeah, again, I would say life is not a straight line. It's not a linear motion. You know what you want, but then circumstances sometimes force you. One of the things I have always wanted is to make it very clear, especially for my daughter, that as a woman, you have to make sacrifices to grow your career, and that nothing should stop you from growing your career. But then, because we love our families, there are those circumstances that you are forced to put your career at hold and, take steps back and just say, let me be with my family. And so when situations dictate so, then you should be able to say, okay, I'll spend the next 2 years, 1 year at home.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you have stopped your career. Everyone understands you're home because you need to support for this or that other reason. So one thing I've always made clear, especially to my daughter, is that you have to work hard. And when I look at all these successful women out there, I know for sure they made a lot of sacrifices.
Yeah, and I think that you don't stop living because you have to raise a family.
Exactly.
You have your own desires as a woman, but you also desire the best for your family.
Yes.
And you want to raise children that are going to be successful,
Yes.
that are going to be progressive in life. So it's a balancing act.
Yeah, and I think, I personally think that, to be honest, if my children were to be asked today, I know for sure they would say, our mother has been so hardworking and she's really sacrificed. If there's anything my children can pick from me, is the fact that I've worked hard, because they've seen me really work hard. They've seen me really do a lot of things for me, for them, for my mother, and for anyone that needed our support. And they know that if I had not made these sacrifices,
You wouldn't have achieved.
I wouldn't have been able to support the people I've been able to support. Yeah. I'll give you an example. I don't think my own sister would have gone to school if I hadn't made these sacrifices, because my dad passed on when my sister was still a very young baby, and I would say my dad didn't even raise her. So I really had to, to make sure that she goes through school, and now she holds a degree, and every time I look back, I have absolutely no regrets. And if there's anything I've also taught my children, is that it's good to make sacrifices for us and for others as well.
I think one of the very good lessons I learned from your experience is that you also explained to your children why you had to be away.
Yeah.
And they understood and appreciated why you had to be away.
I explained, and I continue explaining until now. Every time we are together, we look at, okay, so you've been away this time, or I've been away this time, and this is where we are, this is where we were, this is where we want to go. Some of those goals are joint goals, like family goals. Some are individual goals. And I'm really happy that despite the fact that I was away from home, I managed to raise very focused children. My children have remained very focused, and to be honest, where we are today, it never worries me that I'm not home. We speak very regularly. We have a WhatsApp group, and in the WhatsApp group, we don't just discuss serious things. Sometimes, we share all our experiences throughout the
everyday life.
Every day, including, those moments when you're really upset, sometimes even at work. Sometimes when I come across some memes that are, making fun of how we parent, and it's something that I've heard from them. I post there and I get to hear what they think about it, and we laugh it off. Sometimes I just want to check how each one of them is doing, and I say, can we convene here, you know? So yeah.
I like the fact that you're very deliberate about engaging with your children.
Yeah.
Because I want to imagine that you could be present and living with your children,
Yes.
and not make deliberate efforts to engage your children and have conversations with them.
Yeah.
For you to develop that relationship that can be open, for them to share their fears, to share their successes, to share anything
Yeah.
that they would like to share with you. So I think it's something that maybe some parents could also learn from, especially parents who are living the kind of life that you're living.
Yeah. I think one other thing I would want to say is that we all, as you know, as they grew up, we really came to cherish moments spent together, and it didn't matter what we were doing together. You know, I didn't have to have money. I don't have to have money for us to spend time together. Sometimes we go out literally to watch the sun setting, and we stand there, watch the sunset, take pictures. Sometimes we take walks, the four of us. We are literally taking a walk, and it's one of those memorable. Every time when I return to my work or duty station, I keep thinking about the walk we had, the evening walks we had, you know, the last time we watched the sunset, or a simple meal that we prepared and shared outside, you know, on the grass. Yeah, so we've really grown to cherish those moments, and
I think it's what we leave behind for our children, right?
Sure.
Because it's really the experiences, the moments we share with our children that live with them forever.
Yeah.
Even long after we are gone, that is what they will hold on to.
Yeah.
Because that is what the moments that we create, the experience that we create, that makes them, that makes life what it is,
Exactly.
really.
Yeah.
So share with me one of the most difficult parts of parenting remotely
Yeah.
or from afar.
As I said earlier, one of them is when you're away and you learn someone is sick. That can really make you unsettled. Because I remember, I think twice. One time was when, you know, their father went to visit them at school, and one of them was sick. I didn't sleep for quite some time. And then the second time was when I was in Uganda during COVID, and my daughter was sick. If I called home, if I called her phone and she didn't pick, like in the first, if I called her twice, thrice and she didn't pick, I can assure you it made me really, so whenever a family member is sick, that can make you very uncomfortable. And you always think, I wish I was home to do the best. Even if, even when you know, for example, that, they've received all the medical attention that they need, you always feel that your presence could have made it better.
Situations always sound grave when you're not present.
Exactly. So that has been one of those difficult moments. And then of course the second one was, I remember when my boys were teenagers, real teenagers, like when they were in Form 2, Form 3. And I think at some point I felt that they had gotten used to living without me. And so there's a point I even felt that they had just ganged up against me, because it was really, really difficult relating. One, I felt that they were very rebellious at the time. I also feel that both of them having joined, having been in national schools, also prestigious schools, I would say, I think that there was also this peer pressure when they went to school, wanting to look like their peers. There was a lot of, there was a lot of tension, I would say. And I think that was one of the most difficult moments. That's one of the times I really questioned myself as a parent and my parenting skills. Luckily, it was also the time I was home the longest, because at the time I was actually in Nairobi. And I went to school regularly, but every time they came home, I just felt no. There was something that was not, something was amiss. They were just difficult. But thankfully, with persistence. One thing about me is persistence. I'm very persistent. I'm also very deliberate. And I always remind myself that I'm the parent, I'm the older one here, and so it is me who needs to understand them. And it's something I've been very, very deliberate. I'm not that kind of parent who gives up on the children.
Do you even have a choice to give up?
No, I believe I don't. And no matter what, I just had, and then also I always remind myself that giving up on this relationship is not an option.
Yeah.
By all means, I have to do everything it takes to make sure that we maintain, that trusting, loving relationship where my children can always come to me and I can go to them.
And come to you first, not
yes,
anyone else.
Exactly. And I'm happy that when I'm home today, my children will stop anything and make time to be with me. And I'll do the same. When I'm home, I'll stop anything to be with them. I'm really happy about that.
You've done well.
To be honest, I thank God for the far I have come. I also think I've done really well. And every time I look back and look at them, I'm so grateful that they've turned out the way they are. I'm happy that they're just good children. They've turned out really promising, very focused, very obedient, and dependable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we conclude this conversation, I had a question I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you how you've made up for the lost time.
Yeah.
But from this conversation, I already see that there's been no lost time. But if you could, do you feel that there was some lost time you could have spent more time with your teens? And if you feel that way, how have you made up for the lost time?
Looking at my circumstances, there is no lost time. Because looking at where I have come from and what my life has been, doing it any other way would have meant a totally different thing for me and probably for all of us. I needed to get to where I am today.
Yeah.
Because I came from a family that had nothing. And to be honest, if I hadn't put in the effort I put, I don't think that I would have much to smile about today. And so what I'm proud of is that they understood that I needed to make these sacrifices. And are there places I could have done better? Probably, yes. But I think I tried so much, just like I keep trying today. When I'm home, they know I'm home. I don't get home and disappear to other, visit, spend time. I spend time with my friends, I still spend time with my relatives, but anything that we can do jointly, like if I'm visiting a relative and we can do it together as a family, we do it as a family. I try very much to make sure we spend, but now they're adults. Again, so I'm also at that point where I'm starting to release them out there to the world because now they're adults.
Now you're in Tanzania, and as you say, they are now adults. Has anything changed? Do you feel like you can be away with less, without feeling like you're cheating them on their time, or does it still feel the same like it did when they were teens?
No, it feels okay. Right now, I don't feel like I'm stealing their time. I don't have that much pressure because number one, they're adults, and even if I'm home, they also have their own lives to live. So a lot of times we only spend time when all of us are free. So you find that each one of them is doing one of two things, and they are busy with their own, chasing their own dreams. And so even when I'm home, it doesn't necessarily mean because I'm home we are going to be spending the entire day together. And that's what I mean by saying they are now adults. So and then also, because of technology, we do video calls, we do we do WhatsApp, and a lot of times I'm almost informed about what each one of them is doing, literally on a daily basis. It's like, I know so-and-so is in school today, so-and-so today did go to school, so-and-so is at work or is working remotely today. So that's another thing. We really have a very transparent relationship. And I made it also a point that when I'm home and I'm leaving home, they always know where I'm going. They know most of my friends. My children know almost, I don't know if there's any of my friends they don't know, except maybe my colleagues. But even my colleagues, they know them by name. They hear me talk about, oh, Lillian, Sally, that kind of thing. They literally know all my friends, both male and female. And so when I'm going out, I always tell them I'm going to be meeting so-and-so. And for sure, they know that I'll be with so-and-so. And I also try to do the same. When they leave, I always know they are either attending a birthday party with a friend, something like that. And then also, I'm very deliberate about welcoming their friends. I've also been very, very, their friends call me mom. And I treat them literally more or less like my own children when they come over. I've formed very strong bonds with their friends as well. I've made them believe, or rather understand, that they can come home anytime, and that when they come, they should feel they're home. There are some of their friends, I know their parents. There are those I don't know their parents, but they know that they can come home anytime. And even when I'm not home, when they are around, I'll always be told, oh, so-and-so is around, say hi, and I say hi. So that has also really helped. That has helped a lot too.
I think you're one of those very proud parents who has raised their children mostly remotely, but they've turned out to be very well-behaved, achiever children.
Yeah.
And I think for most of you parents who are not away from home, and having to be away from home, not by choice, but by your conditions, I think there is hope. We shouldn't despair, because we really need to balance our careers, but also those careers make us able to raise our children well. And I think from what you said, if you were not able to do the jobs that you did in the different countries, you probably wouldn't have achieved what you were able to achieve with your children.
Exactly. And you see, every time I look at when I look at most of the my female colleagues who are doing well in their careers, the sacrifices they have made are immense. When I look at country directors, like my country director currently, because we get to speak, you realize the sacrifices they have made are just immense. And you get to tell yourself that there are no shortcuts. If you ever really want to make it, there are just no shortcuts. So you have to make these sacrifices. And I think it's, again, there are parents who can be home, but they don't really spend their time with their children.
Exactly.
Yeah, so for me, having made the choice to be away from home doesn't really haunt me, because I know that I do it for the good of all of us, and that when I'm around, I try to make sure I compensate for it.
Thank you very much, Letitia, for being with us. And if you've enjoyed watching us, please subscribe, comment, like, so that you can see many of these kind of videos. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you another time. Hope you'll be willing to come back.
Thank you. By then, I hope I'll have really good things to be sharing as they grow into their careers and so on. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.